And let's now take you back to our top story, where Prime Minister Modi is heading off first to Brunei and then to Singapore, starting tomorrow, which is on Tuesday. This is a key visit of Prime Minister Modi to take India's Act East policy forward and its vision for the Indo-Pacific as well. The 10th year of, in fact, the Act East policy, 10 years being completed. In fact, let's talk about it with Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, who's been India's envoy to ASEAN as well. Good evening to you, Ambassador. What do you make of this trip? How key is it in the first place when an Indian Prime Minister for the first time is headed to Brunei Darussalam?
Good evening, Mr. Rao. So, it is a very historic time. 40 years of diplomatic relations between India and Brunei. And the celebration is nothing less than the visit of Prime Minister Modi. So I think this is very historic because the relationship with Brunei is not one of the most active within ASEAN. We have had the Sultan of Brunei make 2 bilateral visits to India in 1992 when embassies were opened, and in 2008. And subsequently, he has come twice for the 20th anniversary celebrations of India and ASEAN, and then the 25th anniversary, when he was also among the chief guests at the Republic Day. From the Indian side, the highest bilateral visit we have had is of the Vice President in 2016. And we had Prime Minister Manmohan Singh visit Brunei, but that was not bilateral. That was for East Asia Summit. So what Prime Minister Modi is doing is filling in a major diplomatic gap and providing Brunei the engagement with India to make it flower even further. So I think that makes it extremely important. Brunei is a very important oil supplier. Though our trade with them is small, but they can be a very good partner for an expanded defense partner.
How critical is that aspect really in terms of India's strategic interests? Brunei is seen as a distant country, and not many people in India know much about it, apart from the fact that it is a monarchy and the fact that it produces oil and gas. What more can you tell us about the kind of relations that India has with Brunei and the potential that it holds as well for further advancement?
So Brunei was a British colony and only got its independence in 1984. You know, Brunei is situated on the island of Borneo, 80% of which has 5 provinces of Indonesia, 20% of which has 2 provinces of Malaysia, and stuck inside them is the small country of Sultanate of Brunei. So it is small, but it is much richer compared to its neighbors because of its oil wealth and the way that the Sultan's regime has managed it. So they have basically been a non-controversial country. They joined ASEAN as soon as they became independent and have been a part of all ASEAN-centric bodies, including the RCEP on trade, the East Asia Summit, the ASEAN Regional Forum, and the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting. They were the chair of ASEAN in 2023, I think. No, 2021. And before that in 2013. So they are not going to come into a position of influence in ASEAN for another 8 years. But they are one of the most gentle and calm countries in ASEAN. They have a great respect for Indian professionals. And I think your correspondent was telling us about the number of Indian doctors, chartered accountants, IT professionals who are there. You know, I personally know that when I was in Brunei in 2013 and I had an eye issue, I was immediately seen by highly specialized eye specialists, and they were all Indian. Right. So it was quite an eye-opener for me. So I think what we are likely to see is a growth in our defense partnership, because on the trade side, there is just that much that Brunei can buy, and their oil exports are also limited.
Okay, and Singapore, many Indians, far more than Brunei, know about Singapore because of its prominence as far as world's business affairs are concerned. But again, the strategic aspect is very little known in terms of how India is looking to extend the strategic partnership to unprecedented levels with Singapore as well, be they in critical areas of technology and investment, apart from the fact that, of course, there's a security aspect to it as well. In this entire context, if you take Brunei and Singapore together, the entire Indo-Pacific region, where China is a major challenge to all these countries.
So if you take the three pillars on which the ASEAN community stands, the economic pillar is the most important with Singapore. Singapore is the largest trading partner of India in ASEAN. I think about last year, about $38 billion out of a total of $120 billion. It is the largest investor from ASEAN. 95% of ASEAN investment is routed through Singapore to India. So it's a very good channel for us. From India too, a lot of investment goes through the Singapore route. And they are the headquarters of over 200 Indian companies. Now, given this economic relationship, new developments like renewable energy, digital economy, skill development, sustainability, all this is something that our discussions with Singapore lead on. Now, I like to come back to this, but I like to say that the socio-cultural aspect is the second most important aspect with Singapore, because a large number of Indians, professionals live there, and there's also a large amount of PIOs, people of Indian origin, including their current president. So they have a good relationship with India in these terms. Finally, you asked me about the strategic element. Now, for long, India and Singapore have had a close defense relationship. A lot of their military training is held in India. We have perhaps the oldest exercise with an ASEAN country, the SIMBEX, is with Singapore. So that is a very vibrant relationship as well, though it does not translate into the ASEAN level, whereas the socio-cultural and the economic aspects do. Now, if today you want to talk about China, which you mentioned, I think we should not be talking about China. Because the moment you talk about China, the ASEAN countries play turtle. They pull their head in and cover themselves. They have a very strong economic partnership with ASEAN and do not want to discuss strategic challenges. Brunei is one of the 4 countries which is actually suffering because of the Chinese 9-dash line. But you never hear them complain, never. They learn to live with it and learn to quietly say, okay, let's not make trouble. So I don't think India needs to look at China to determine its engagement with ASEAN countries. We need to find our own tracks. And I think with Singapore, we are doing it very well. You know, just last week, we had 4 Indian ministers, Finance Minister, External Affairs Minister, Trade and Industry Minister, and IT and Railways Minister, who met their counterparts, but they also met the Singapore Minister for Law and Home Affairs. And this 4x4, it does not have the Defense Minister, which 2x2 have. It's a 4x4, is putting so much energy into the Singapore-India relationship, bringing in new areas, and they've added 2 more now. I think advanced manufacturing and connectivity. So I think India and Singapore are moving rapidly ahead, not looking at China over their shoulder, but realizing that there's much we can do together. Now, if that can become infectious to the other ASEAN countries, it will be great. Now, recently we had, this year itself, the Prime Minister of Vietnam in India, And then we had the Prime Minister of Malaysia in India this month. So I think many of them are now actually looking to balance China without saying so. Saying so causes them embarrassment. Developing a relationship with India without talking about China, the South China Sea and all that, gives them comfort. So I think we should give them that comfort and expand our relationship. And that is what I think PM Modi is being assiduously doing. And later this year in October, he will be in Laos for the ASEAN Plus One and East Asia summits. So I think that will really complete the cycle for this year.
All right. Well, let's hope that the relations are taken forward with not just these two nations and with ASEAN as well, as you mentioned in October, because there's one particular aspect that India and ASEAN have been trying to rework as well, which is the FTA. And let's hope there's progress on that front too. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh.